Okay, so last time we did Gam Misrapi b'malachto achu lebal mashchis. Even one who is lax in his work is a brother to the master of destruction. Yeah, anyone want to try summarizing what we came up with? Not the Rabbeinu Yonah, but the idea that the approach that we had.
That I guess if you are lax in your work, then basically you are you kind of don't realize that you think like, oh, it's not a big deal. I have the choice to like put in the effort or not. But actually in the effect, you're pretty much the same as someone who like destroys things because you basically create a faulty product or no product at all. And yeah.
Okay, good. Welcome to Rafael Alcabez. This is a new addition to our group. So yay. Yeah. So Raf, we're just, I don't know if you're there because I can't see you, but we're reviewing what we did yesterday and just tying up one loose end, and then we'll start a new pasuk after that. Isaac, you have anything to add to what Zev said?
No.
Okay. So I'll show you my 4-sentence summary. And again, the reason why I do this in shiur is because I feel like it puts more pressure on me to actually write these 4-sentence summaries, which is better for everyone. And then also this will give you a chance to what do you call it? Hold on a second. Oops. No.
The quibble.
Wait just a second. Sorry, I just had to respond to Raf on the chat. Hold on. Yeah, this will make me more on top of things in terms of my own summaries. Okay, so I call this one the rationalization of passive destruction. If master destroyer is someone who actively brings about destruction, then a brother to the master destroyer is someone who causes the same level of destruction in a different manner, in this case through passivity. The audience of this pasuk is the person whose laxity causes the quality of his work to suffer, thereby resulting in a type of destructiveness. So that's pretty much what Zev said. And then I added the subject of the pasuk. Oh, we got Isaiah too. Nice. All right. Isaiah, we're just reviewing the and you have a camera. Even better. Yeah, we're just reviewing the pasuk we did yesterday and tying up one loose end, and then we'll start a new one. Okay, anyway, so this is a part I added yesterday. Such an individual tends to rationalize his laxity by defining and perceiving himself as a worker, which allows him to reassure himself and other people, saying, see, I'm working. Perhaps this is why the pasuk doesn't specify the consequences of this person's behavior, but instead calls him out on his rationalization, as if to say, you may wish to define yourself as a worker, but in truth you are a destroyer. So that was the subject, according to my understanding, is that it's aimed at the subject of the pasuk is rationalization, even though it's about rationalization in laziness, and it's a technique you use to rationalize is you label yourself something, and then instead of looking at the actual results of your activity, you just look at your label and then pat yourself on the back because you're doing the right thing.
Would you say that part of the rationalization is that you tell yourself that you're just being more efficient?
More efficient or efficient?
Like that you're like kind of like you're telling yourself, oh yeah, I can get the same result with less work.
I guess sometimes it is. I guess that would really depend on whether you're consciously or like knowingly cutting corners or not, you know? And even, I guess even people who are knowingly cutting corners might still try to justify it by saying that they're being more efficient. Yeah, I think that's, I think that is is not an essential part of the pasuk. I think because the pasuk is about rationalization. I think like the ikar is look at what you're actually doing rather than how you label yourself. And then what you're talking about is the motive that would cause a person to actually like decide to be lazy, you know, and that could be varied. Yeah. Okay. So one more loose end that we didn't do yesterday, which we said we would end off thinking about, which is the Rabbeinu Yonah. So let's look at the Rabbeinu Yonah. So actually, for those who were not here last time, did Raf leave? Okay. Or am I just not seeing him? Yeah, I guess he left. All right. I said you could stay, but whatever. So for Isaiah, I guess this is a new, a different shot here. Okay. So you can treat this as a new pasuk, even though we're not going to dwell on it. So again, the translation is Gam misrape b'malachto achu lebal mashchis. even or also someone who is lax in his work is a brother to the master destroyer, okay, or the master of destruction. Okay, so Rabbeinu Yonah says, Baal hochiach ha'atzel hamisrapi b'malachto. This is coming to rebuke a lazy person who is lax in his work. Okay, and Rabbeinu Yonah says specifically his work. Shelo yomar, a person shouldn't say, ki ein onesh rak b'misrape b'malechas acherim, that there's the only punishment is when you're lax in someone else's work. Ach im esra pe b'malechas atzmi lo yeh bo chet. But if I'm lax in my own work, then there's no chet in this. Okay. So regarding this, it says, Ahu l'bal mashlis. He is a brother to the master of destruction. Ki yechashiv hamashlis mamon atzmo chote. Someone who destroys or squanders or wastes his own money is called a sinner. Also, it says by the pasuk that's the source of Bal Tashchis, as Chazal explain it. V'hinei hamisrapi b'melachto umafsid harevach uma'abed tova harbe. Someone who is lax in his own work and loses out on profit and squanders or destroys a lot of good. He is a brother to the master of destruction. Because he's considered as though he destroys his own work. And I think. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Then one more point. Mashlis is shem davar. That's a noun. Ish kli mashlis obiado. Okay. Ubas gam milas gam, and the reason why it says gam al machsheves hamisrape b'malachto. That's in the thought. That's responding to the havamina of the person who's lax in his work. Sheyachshov, because he thinks ki ein chet rak behisrabus hanischar b'malachas hamaskir. That there's only a chet in laxity in the employee working for an employer. Okay, so the question we had basically, so just summarizing the shot here, according to Rabbeinu Yonah, this is not talking about someone who's lazy in general. This is talking about someone who's lazy who is diligent in other people's work when he's working for others for hire, but he's lax in his own work. And Rabbeinu Yonah is telling him that there's a chet in losing out on profit and squandering good. And that's what this is, and that's why it's calling him a Baal Mashkis, because it's like he's destroying his own money because he's losing out on profit. So the question we had is, first of all, like chet is a very strong word here. How can you call it a chet just to lose out on profit? I mean, what if you decide not to make profit? Like, is that a chet? Do you have to like scramble after every profit? That does not seem to be in line with like the values of chachamim who like make a work a means towards a specific end. Like it's not just we have infinite profit. And then secondly, like, what is the defect in this guy? I mean, Rabbeinu Yonah calls it laziness, but clearly it's not like this is a lazy person, because when he's working for someone else, he works really hard. So like, what exactly is the idea according to Rabbeinu Yonah? I don't know if any of you thought about it. I just thought about it last like 15 minutes.
Is it possible that he's saying like, if you are doing an activity for profit, then you should do it to your full effort or whatever?
Yeah. Okay, good. So I think that's the first step you have to make, right? Is the situation we're talking about here is only when the person when he ought to be making a profit, either because that's what he decides to do or that's what he needs to do. But we're not talking like this is not an absolute thing that you should always strive to maximize profits, because that would interfere with other goals in life. So that's step number one. Okay, so now that'll help us to understand what this guy's mistake is. So why would a person be in a situation where he needs to make profit or he wants to make profit and yet be lax? If we see if it's the thing where he's like in the grips of laziness and he's incapable of putting in hard work, like in general, so then we understand it. Then this is just normal laziness. But like this guy is fully capable of, if you hired him to do the same amount of work, he would do it without a problem. So why is it that when it comes to his own work, then he's lax?
It's like opportunistic laziness. That's what it seems like to me. Like that
What do you mean
he's.
by that? I like that phrase, and that's why I'm smiling.
Yeah. When like he like has a desire not to to be lazy, but he's overcoming it when necessary. And so if he can justify to himself that it's not necessary here, then he will be lazy.
Okay, I see. Okay, that's an approach. So is that an end in and of it, or is that like a sufficient explanation? Do we need to go one step further? Meaning, do we need to ask, like you could ask then, why is it that he can force himself to do it with when he's being hired, but he can't force himself to do it when it's his own profit? And again, I want to highlight like the root of the problem here. If anything, like you would think that someone who's working for their own profit would be even more like diligent, you know, because it's for himself as opposed to being forced to do it for someone else. So I think that's a good first step, but I still think I feel like we need to define it a little bit more. And this is just methodologically, by the way, there's a temptation. You saw a little, those who were in last night's shiur, you saw a little bit of this last night of like, sometimes you have to go into psychology in Mishlei more in depth, and sometimes you can just look at the behavior itself. And you got to like use your intuition for that. And so my intuition right now is telling me that if we're going to take that approach that Isaac's saying, we have to go a little bit more into the psychology. You hear the question that I'm saying on your shot? Yeah.
I mean, this might be totally out there, but
so's mine. Don't worry. Yeah.
Is it possible that he I guess like feels guilty for trying to like achieve his own needs?
Interesting.
And so he kind of like sabotages himself.
That is really interesting. So there are people like that, right? There are people like that. Let me just think about it for 1 second here. I hear that. I hear that. It's as out there as mine. So let me tell you mine, okay? And we'll see if any one of them like is more mashma. Okay. So here's my let me just make another methodology point here. So this is true in intuition in general, right? Is that when you are first starting out in an area, then your intuition is less honed, and therefore, if you associate to something, it might be coming from your mind, or it might be coming from your emotions. And then as you go on in the area, like as you become more skilled, then your intuition becomes more honed, and you can differentiate when you're just free associating, and then when you're what do you call it? When your intuition's coming from the area. And I'm smiling because last night's shiur about parenting, there were actually a couple people who messaged me during or after the shiur when they were talking about like the puzzle was about relationship to your parents, and there were a couple people who messaged me saying I'm clearly just projecting, like they weren't actually interpreting, so like it's hard to know, right? So with that premise, what I associated to here was that there are students who, as I'm speaking as a high school teacher here, there are students who, when it comes to an assignment, they will put forth they'll give it their all, and they'll like strive to get a perfect grade. But when they're on their own, and it's just a learning lishma environment, they will not put forth an effort, or they won't put forth as strong of an effort, So in that case, it's clearly... Assignment? Say again?
What do you mean by given an assignment?
If they're assigned something in school.
Oh, like an in-class assignment, not like a...
No, homework assignment. Either. Homework, paper, test, That's what... Okay. Is that what we call it? Okay, I call those assignments. I don't know if you have different terminology.
No, I wasn't sure whether you meant like an in-class project where they're collaborating with other people.
Oh, no. I just mean like if it's for a grade, let me put it that way. If it's for a grade, okay, then they'll give it their all. But if it's not for a grade, then they won't, right? So that reminded me of this situation, because you see that when they're in the environment of grades, so then that shows that they're capable of being diligent. So it's not a matter of intrinsic laziness, So how would you diagnose the problem there? Like in the case of the students, what would you say is going on?
Opportunistic laziness.
Can you put it in learning terms that Chazal would use?
Opportunistic atzlus.
So I'd call that shalol lishma, right? Those students are clearly operating shalol lishma, because when they're going to get a reward of a grade, then they put in their work, and when they're not, then they don't. So what's the problem there? Is that they're not really relating to learning for its own sake. They're relating to learning as a means to get a grade. Okay, so here's my out there interpretation, and you tell me if this works here. I think that this guy is not relating to money as a reality. Okay, I think what he's doing is, you see that in the framework of justice, he would never be lax on someone else's job. Okay, that's what Rabbeinu Yonah says, that he knows shelo yomar ki ein onesh that in onesh terms, like in terms of or onesh and hate terms, he would never be lax in someone else's work. Or maybe you can put it in terms of responsibility. Maybe it's not having to do with halacha. Maybe it has to do with like bein adam l'chavero, social contract type stuff. Or maybe it has to do with when he's doing his job, like it's in the framework of a job. So then he is he can put forth everything. But it's clear he doesn't relate to money as a reality, because if this is a situation where like he needs to make a profit or he's decided to make a profit and then he's lax, so then he clearly is just not relating to the fact that there is ample profit here to be had, like there is some disconnect to the profit. Like if you put $100 on the table to this guy and said, if you grab this, it's yours, he would grab it, because it's real to him that money is right there. But if you tell him, oh, if you like, fix the font on your sign to make it more readable, then you'll attract more customers without doing any work. And he's like, it's not that important, So clearly, like there's some disconnect in this guy here where he's not relating to the activities. He's not relating to the pursuit of profit as a reality. So he'll only relate to the money. In other words, like when he's working for someone else and it's not in the framework of like working for money, then he will, he'll not be lazy. But when it's for profit, then he will be lazy. So that's my theory. What do you think?
Wait, what do you mean by not relating to it as a reality?
Meaning that he will view in the same way that the student does not relate to learning as an actual good, but learning as a means to a grade. And therefore, if there's no grade, then they're not going to do it. They're not drawn to it. So to here, if this is a job I'm given, or if I have a contract, or if this is in the framework of halacha and I'm obligated to work to a certain level of like not wasting time, so then I'll do it. That's like the lo lishma. But if it's for my own self-advancement through earning more money, like that's just not something that I'm relating to as a real good, such that it would motivate me to work, to put in all the work.
Is that intrinsically a bad thing?
It's intrinsically a bad thing in the sense that he is not relating to money as what it actually is. Like money is resources, and if let's say we're in the framework of Talmud Torah, or being a chacham, like so money is, again, the whole premise of our pasuk here is that we're in a situation where profit would be good for his life, would improve his life, right? We're not talking about like someone who's just like trying to make $1 billion just because he wants to be viewed as a rich person. So given that fact, like that profit would be good for him, then it is bad that he's not relating to it as reality. It'd be like, I mean, this is not exactly the same scenario, but like if a person, said, like, let's say a person, here's a particular example within this. Let's say like a person realizes that the job that I do, the work I do for a living, I'm not going to be able to do past a certain age. Like, let's say like I'm a construction worker and like past the age of 60, then I'm not going to be able to do that work. So I need to find ways to make more money now so that I have money to take care of me in my retirement, So if he didn't relate to the need to make more money now, excess beyond like what he is making by default, so then that would be a deficiency. Like he's not roes hanolad, And that's the type of scenario we're talking about. We're not talking about making profit just to get ahead or to be rich. We're talking about like where profit is a good thing for him. That's like the premise of the pasuk. Okay. So I don't know. I mean, I like your theory too, Zev. And I don't know if they're equally plausible, but that's what we got here.
So how's this pasuk addressing that?
So this pasuk is addressing it by saying, so I think the move the pasuk is making is so this is, it's interesting. So the last pasuk yeah, this is a good question. Okay, so the last way we interpreted it is we're saying he's using his self-labeling thing to rationalize a bad decision. Here the pasuk is helping him overcome it by tapping into his lo lishma. It's saying, like, to imagine the student, right? So the student imagine a student who's a straight A student who does every assignment to get 100. Okay, and then let's say like you're doing like an optional learning thing, and they're just not learning. So if you go to that student and you say, "Why are you acting like a bad student?" That's gonna be a trigger. That's gonna be like a lo lishma trigger. And they're like, I'm not a bad student. Like, look, I get straight A's. Well, then why are you not like, investing yourself in this? So like this guy prides himself on being a good worker or a loyal employee or whatever. And you're going up to him and you're saying, oh, you're just a bal mashchis. You're an ach to the bal mashchis. You really, if you were really a good worker, then when you were self-employed, you'd be as good as you were when you're employed by someone else. So it's tapping into that lo lishma. So this is like a very Mishlei solution. Also, is like, you can't get rid of this lo lishma. You can't just like you can't go poof and the lo lishma is gone, but you can harness it to your advantage. And that's what this is saying to him. Saying it's calling him out of like, this guy would not want to be viewed as a bal mashchis, and saying, look, you're an ach to the bal mashchis because you're not working as hard for yourself as you would for an employer. That was a good question. That clarified the idea.
Yeah.
Okay, are we ready for a new pasuk? Yeah.
Can I ask about the yesh lefarish?
In the Rabbeinu Yonah?
Yeah.
I didn't read it. Let's see. Is that here?
No, it's right under that.
Oh, right under that. Oh, yes, I didn't even see that. Oh, oopsies. Hold on. Yesh.
I just glanced at it and it looks interesting.
Okay. Yesh lefarish gam b'misrapi b'melechas hanirgan. So that was a possibility we said, right? That the gam is connecting it to the previous pasuk, and it's the melechas hanirgan, the work of the complainer. Does he learn nirgan as complainer? Yeah, bal tuluna, so complainer. Okay. V'yomar b'liban, he says in his heart, im eshkod b'melachto, if I am diligent, or if I hover over his work, halo yisraim alai, will he not complain about me? Kasher im esrapeba, if I am lax in it. Achul b'mashchis, he is a brother to the master of destruction. Ki ein lo la'abit emunaso mipnei roa musar hanirgan. This is a good one. So this is talking about a situation where your boss is a complainer. Okay, and what you tell yourself is like this: is if I work really hard, if I don't work hard, so then he's going to complain about me, right? But im eshkod b'malachto, if I work really hard, he's still going to complain about me. So why should I work hard? Okay, so you're using someone else's bad midah as a rationalization for your bad decision. Okay, and that's why Rabbeinu Yonah says, "Ki ein lo la'abed emunaso umanuso." I don't know if it's emunaso or umanuso. I mean, it looks like you read it as emunaso. He shouldn't destroy his trustworthy reputation. Mipnei ruah musar hanirgan, due to the bad character of the nirgan. But you could also read it. You could pull an al tikra emunaso ala umanuso. You shouldn't destroy his reputation as a craftsman, right? You shouldn't destroy his credentials because of the bad musar of the nirgan. So this is a really interesting thing. So this I would say is in the subject the way I defined it, which was rationalization, right? That sometimes you use other people's defects to rationalize your own bad decisions. There's no rational reason to be less productive simply because someone else is going to irrationally complain about you, unless that's going to actively harm you. But in this case, it sounds like this boss is going to nitpick at you and complain about you no matter what. So the thing is, so why should that be an excuse for you doing less work? Like if you're employed by him, so first of all, again, not that this is like teaching you halakha, but halakhically, it would be unjust and usher to be lax in your work simply because your boss has bad midos, But mishleically also, the Ashes Chayil is not going to slack off because her work is not appreciated, she's going to work for the sake of the system, or the Chacham who wants to perfect his craft is going to work for the sake of the craft. Right. So, yeah,
I think it's focusing on a very narrow framework. It's because there's lots of reasons why you should be diligent in your work, to produce good work and for your reputation. But if a person is selecting one area, which is his boss's approval,
yeah,
and then saying, since I'm not gonna be able to achieve this, there's no reason to put in extra effort.
Right. Yeah. So
he's narrowing his focus to a single axis of benefit.
Right. So that's actually a good point. That one of the features of rationalization is I'm going to make a statement here that is going to be absolute. Not that I've researched it or thought about it, but I'm going to make it absolute so that it can lend itself to being knocked down if you find exceptions. So here we go. All rationalization involves compartmentalization. Okay. And by compartmentalization, I mean what you just said, Isaac, which is a chacham will take into account all factors that are within his control and all knowledge that he can know, and then make a decision based on an analysis of all the factors. But rationalization will involve like focusing in on one thing and putting on blinders about other factors, and then treating it as though that's the full data set, you know? So in this case, he's saying, well, like he's ignoring the fact that the framework of halacha and justice and doing work and making a good product and the effects of his work on other people. And he's just looking, my boss is going to nitpick me, therefore, why should I work? Yeah, good point. Now, this actually brings me to a methodology point that I had a lot of methodology points locked and loaded for last night, in case they came up. So this brings me to I think it's a machlokus. I don't know if machlokus is too strong of a word, but it's a machlokus among the Mepharshim, of do we darshan smuchim? Okay, do we interpret the juxtaposition of psukim? Okay, and I don't mean, there are clearly psukim where they were intended to be read together, where it's almost like one long pasuk. Everyone holds that like those psukim exist. So this is an example of the Rabbeinu Yonah being
question.
Yeah.
Sorry, just to clarify, you mean by darshan smuchim, you mean we're talking about in the context of Mishlei and not like
in Mishlei,
and not like when the Gemara is talking about like Dorish Smuchim. You're talking about in terms of learning Mishlei specifically.
Learning Mishlei, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. For example, everyone holds that in Chumash, then darshaning smuchim is a legitimate move to do. You know, like that's what everyone
Actually,
does.
It's a machlokas, I think.
I'm talking Torah B'Ksav. I'm not talking halacha. Everyone holds you darshan smuchim, right?
Okay,
like,
yeah,
look at all the Mefarshim, and they will ask the question, well, why is this pasuk why is this inyan next to this inyan? You know, because especially if you, let's put it this way, especially if you hold ein mukdam u'muchar b'Torah. So then the question is, if it's not dictated chronologically, then the order is dictated by content. And then the question is, why is this content relevant to that content? But in Mishlei, it's a machlokas. So Rabbeinu Yonah does it, and this is a good example about how he does it. One of the examples about how he does it, where he'll say that both psukim, even though they are about different topics, you can learn them where if you took the lesson of this pasuk and applied it to the scenario of the previous pasuk or vice versa, then you get a new idea. And then I want to show you someone else. Here's another feature of Ala Torah. Okay, so apparently you can create an account. And if you create an account, which is free, you just need to log in, and then it keeps you logged in. So then it remembers your, you know what? I can actually just demonstrate this. Hold on. So let's see, I go to my personal account here, and it will remember all your highlighting and all of it'll give you a history of what you looked up last. Everyone can see I was looking at a lot of Unkelos this morning. And so it'll remember your highlights, and it'll keep them from page to page. So there's absolutely no cost, and like if you just want to highlight stuff to be able to find it better, then this is great. So I recommend doing it. So first thing I was going to say last night, this is related to this. Mishlei Shalom ben Chacham Yisamach Av. So Amar Yosef. So this is Yosef ibn Kaspi, who wrote 2 Pirushim. I don't know why he wrote 2. Okay, I don't know if these are 2 drafts or like just 2 different goals. Ki Shlomo lo chiber kol hasefer hazeh baseder. So I highlighted that because this is a question of, is there such a thing as an order in Mishlei? Okay, and certainly in the first 9 chapters there's an order, but in 10 through 29 is there an order? So I'm convinced that everyone holds that there's no order in terms of the grand scheme of things. But the question is like, is there order in the particulars? Okay, so what he says is like this. So why isn't there order? So Kishlomo, maybe one of you raised this question earlier in the year, in our first Mishlei shiur. I don't remember. Kishlomo lo chiber kol hasefer hazeh baseder merishus ad acharizo. He didn't order it from beginning to end. Rakai omer ma'amarav lemasharsav v'sarav. He would say his statements to his ministers and his servants. Kamo shekasuv ashrei avadecha ha'omdim lefanecha. I don't know what that's a reference to. Ashrei anashecha ashrei avadecha ele ha'omdim lefanecha tamid hashomim es chachmasecha. I don't even know what the context is here. Okay, fine. But I guess that's just saying that there are people who stand before him all the time. The Haim Hayu Kostim Osam. Okay, and they would write them. So he's saying that Shlomo didn't even order the book. He had secretaries, right? Or stenographers, right? Who would just like record, or like groupies, right? Who would record Shlomo's like wise statements, and then they order them. Okay.
They're the first court stenographers.
Yes. And then he says, hold on. V'da'od ki ein anu dorshim smuchim b'zeh sefer. So we don't interpret juxtapositions in the sefer. Ki hu miteva sifrei hafilosofim shekol ma'amar mehem omen ba'atmo. It's part of the style of philosophers' works that each statement stands on its own. V'im yesh psukim yechidim ki inyanim samuch kamosh nefarish. Even though there are psukim that their topics are juxtaposed intentionally. Yeah. So again, I don't know whether to call this a machlokas or not, but the fact that Rabbeinu Yonah frequently does it, and Yosef ibn Kaspi says we don't do it, except for like on a few occasions, like they're certainly expressing it as a machlokas. So just something to keep in mind. I don't know if we could define it, like, but or if this is just like an intuition thing. So that's that. Not Rubino Moskowitz. Rabbi Moskowitz went through a like 2 summers where all we did was Bidorsh Smuchim, and it was an interesting experiment, but I didn't like it so much, and he eventually gave it up also. But he got some interesting results. Okay, so yeah,
the Meiri, from what I know, sometimes will learn multiple psukim as one thing. It's like one.
Right.
Would you say that falls under that, or is it?
I was thinking about that. It is a thing that the Meiri often does. And I don't even know if that's taking a side on the machlokus or if it is him treating the units of Mishlei as clusters rather than as psukim. In other words, when Rabbeinu Yonah is dorish smuchim, he's not saying that the 2 psukim are meant to be read as one idea. He learns each one independently, and then he just applies elements of one to the other. But the Meiri really seems to be learning it like you treat it as like one. Each cluster is its own idea. I don't know if that is in this machlokus or if it's like on a different what do you call it, like axis. I'm not sure. It's a good question though. Okay. So let's do the new pasuk, and it's actually not that bad. We only have 12 minutes, but it's not that bad that we're not getting into this because this pasuk would have taken us at least 2 days to do. Okay, so we'll start today. I did not copy and paste the pasuk. Oh, ignore the art scroll. Ignore the art scroll. Okay, I tried to set it up ahead of time. Just 1 second here. All right, so this pasuk is. We are now in Mishlei 18. Let me move you guys out of the way. We're up to 18:10, right? Yeah. Okay. So, this pasuk says. Migdal Oz Shem Hashem Bo Yarutz Tzadik V'Nisgav. Okay. Anyone want to try translating? This one's difficult to translate. Isaac, I hope you're not. Okay, I was gonna say I hope you're not being silent because I made too many jokes about you last night.
No, it's fine.
Okay,
I'm just silently gnashing.
Yeah.
Can I try to translate it?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, but there's a couple words I'm not sure about.
Yeah, that's fine.
So a tower of strength is Oz?
Yeah. Hold on.
Yeah, so a tower of strength is the name of Hashem. To it run tzaddikim and are strengthened. I'm not sure about Niskav.
Tzaddik. Yes, strengthened. Yeah. The righteous and is so strengthened is one interpretation. Okay. All right. So a tower of strength is the name of Hashem. To it runs the righteous and strengthened. Now you're translating bo as to it. Okay. And I think that like intuitively that makes sense. But what would be the literal translation of bo?
In
it, right?
I have a question about this pasuk.
Yeah, hold on just a second. In it, just to comment, like, because to it would be like low, right? Low niskav tadik, yarud tadik v'niskav. Yeah, Isaac.
Where's the asnachta?
The asnachta is after. Hold on. is with Hashem. Migdal o Shem Hashem, comma bo yarut static v'niskav.
Okay, yeah, because if the asafta was on the word bo, then
Migdal o Shem Hashem bo
yeah,
yarut static v'niskav.
yeah,
Yeah, I hear. Yeah. Okay. So that is one ambiguity we're faced with is the bow. Okay. Another ambiguity is so niskav. Anyone have another definition of niskav? For example, we say about Hashem ki niskav shemo levado.
I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, I forgot where we say it. I feel like we say it a lot.
Yishtabach.
Yishtabach. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I can't get it out of context. Yeah, so it means elevated.
Or no, sorry, maybe Baruch Shamar.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm so bad at just like tapping into something by memory. I can say it from beginning to end, but I'm not going to waste the time there. So, so elevated is these two are not necessarily contradictory in context because I guess the way that a tower provides protection is you get elevated. Okay, but it might create problems when we actually ask the questions. Okay, so let's do our minimalist mafarshim here. So Targum, I didn't prepare this ahead of time. Targum says Magdala de Ushna Shmeh de Elaka Ube Nirhat Tzadika V'Nitrim Be. Okay, so I believe. See, okay, so you know what? Just in the interest of time, maybe I'll look into this later on instead of looking up all the words in the Jasro right now. So I remember Magdala de Ushna. That is, I think that is a straight translation. Shmei de Elaka is the name of God. Okay. I don't know if this is a consistent thing that he does where he translates the Shem Havaya as Elaka, kind of reverse of Unclos. But I don't know. Uba Nirhat Tzadika, and in it the tzaddik runs. Okay, so he just preserves the Hebrew. The Nitrim Be. Okay, so I believe at first my first thought was Natar is Shamar, but then I realized, and so I thought it meant protected, but then I realized that I think that's with a tet. So I think Nitrim is from Ram, is to be raised. So I think he is learning as elevated. Okay. Sadi Gaon. Oh, let me get the Sadi Gaon on my computer. Let's see what Sadi Gaon says. Mishlei Saadia Gaon. Wow. Yep. Search engines all slow down. Zoom on. This usually shows up immediately. All right. Well, while I'm waiting, I'll look at the physical edition. So Sadigon says, Shem Hashem Kim Migdal Oz. Okay, the name of Hashem is like a tower of strength. Elav Yarut Hatarik V'Yisugav. So that's kind of like Isaiah. Oops, sorry. That's like the way Isaiah translated it. So he says, the name of Hashem is like a tower of strength. The tzaddik runs to it and is Yisugav, and that's going to be like strengthened. I'll just say it like this. I'm just going to go. The tzaddik runs to it. Okay, and then the Metzudas Tzion. Let's look at that. Metzudas Tzion doesn't say anything. That's not helpful. I thought he did. I guess not. Okay, fine. All right, so let's get our questions here. I'm gonna ignore. Oh, sorry. No, let's do the art scroll. So this I did type ahead of time. Should come up. Okay. Art scroll says the name of Hashem is a tower of strength. Through it, a righteous person will race and be strong. Okay, so that's those are the two unique points here. In the name of God is a tower of strength, into which. So I like that, into which, right? Because it kind of combines Isaiah's to it and the literal meaning of ba. Okay. And that's also how you seek refuge, right? If you're using a tower, is you run into the tower from, like, if you're being pursued by an enemy. But I guess that itself is an interpretive move because it means that he is running. I mean, in other words, it sheds a new light on the running. He's on the run from an enemy and he takes refuge in a tower of strength. And okay, I don't know why he says can run and be strengthened, whatever. Okay, then the name of the Lord is a tower of strength. The righteous runs to it and is protected. Okay, fine. So I'm going to delete altar because it's the same as everything else. And our scroll is not different enough for me to be makshiv. Okay, what are the questions and problems? And let's get the questions and problems today, and then we'll analyze it bli neder tomorrow.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is the tzaddik, when we say niskav, is he being elevated like as a, what does niskav mean? Is he being elevated as like a person? Or maybe I was thinking like, is he being elevated within the tower?
I think it's part of the mushal. I think that's the plain shot, but I think maybe it is a good question though. So let's ask first of all, let's ask the broadest question. Okay, what is the mushal? Okay, that's going to be the central question here. Oops, the central question here, right? How is the Shem Hashem like a Migdal Oz? And in what sense is the tzaddik Niskav? And then is Niskav part of the mushal or part of the nimshal? Yeah. Okay, good question. What else?
What does Shem Hashem mean in this context?
Yeah. What is Shem Hashem in this context? Okay, good. What is the situation? What situation is the pasuk talking about? Yeah.
What is a tzaddik?
Yeah, what is a tzaddik? Another question to add to the mushal thing, by the way, is what does yarutz mean? So like in the Living Nach's interpretation, he's running into the tower, but you could also say, according to the other interpretation, he is running within the tower, and that's a little weird because towers don't give a lot of room for running, right? Actually, I'm gonna put this as a separate question here. Okay, is he running to the tower or in the tower? Yeah. Okay. We'll list our normal questions here. Who is the audience of this pasuk? Right? Is it the tzaddik? Yeah.
I had like a specific question about that. I guess
Sure.
If it was the tzaddik, so you would think they would run to Shem Hashem anyway, or like they would already be with Shem Hashem. Like, who's really supposed to hear this?
Yeah. That he runs to the Shem Hashem. Doesn't he do this already? Now, I think that's a reasonable assumption. I don't know if it's true, but it's at least reasonable enough to write down. What is the practical application of this pasuk? What is the subject of this pasuk? Yeah.
Also,
yeah.
Could a Russia take refuge in the Shem Hashem? Or
Okay, good. Is this pasuk talking about a tzaddik because he's the only one who does it, or because he's the only one who can do it, right? And you're asking about an extreme example, right? About the Russia, right? But really, theoretically, this question could apply to any non-tzaddik. Yeah. I'm going to ask a question which is more of a advanced question in the sense that that this is not going to be a naturally occurring question to you unless you've learned both Sfarim. But what is this pasuk doing in Mishlei? Okay, in Mishlei, it sounds very Tehillim-y. Okay, there are lots of psukim in Tehillim about taking refuge in the name of Hashem. Tehillim-y. That's not how you spell Tehillim-y. Okay. There's a lot of psukim in Tehillim that we were familiar with just from like Psukkah de Zimra and Hallel that talk about taking refuge in the Shem Hashem. So I don't know how much experience you need in Tehillim and Mishlei to be able to ask that question or answer that question, but I felt the need to express it. Okay, so let's stop for today, and then we might find more questions tomorrow before we analyze it. But it's going to take some analysis tomorrow. This is a weighty pasuk. I believe when I did this over the summer, it took a couple days. So we'll see what happens. All right. So have a good day. Talk to you later.
all right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.